All right, it's high nine. Hope everybody's got their coffee. Happy Friday to everybody. Would welcome y'all. Thank you. Welcome y'all to Coffee with Carl. As we are, the 5th of June is here already. I can't believe it, and it has been a while. Rich mentioned this. A lot has changed since we were last together last Friday, which is absolutely true. Thought I'd do a quick recap on some business related issues, and then we can talk some other things. But it really was an interesting week. I was on a phone call yesterday with Joey Von Nessen at the university. We all know Joey and great insights on the economy and a few trends that he's been seeing in South Carolina. And this is shocking, quite frankly, but interesting. I don't know if y'all saw this morning, unemployment numbers actually dropped to 13 some change, 13.1 maybe, so lower than expected for the national picture. And in South Carolina, Charleston's been hovering around 12.3% unemployment, Greenville around 12.1%, Columbia 8.6%, which is, I think that also reflects the state and the government influences there. Governments didn't see a lot of layoffs. And so the one time that our economy insulates us is in a negative downturn. So again, we were lowest in the country, 2.3% four months ago, and with the state average statewide 12.1, but we're getting 8.6 here in the Midlands. So that's pretty remarkable, actually, really good. The other thing that it was interesting, just recapping some of Joey's takeaways, was that we're talking about colleges and university, and Beth Dendorf knows this area better than anybody, but that the number of people that have actually gone to college has dropped over the last, it peaked in 2014. And especially technical colleges peaked in 2014. And Joey's point was, we've got to figure out how to keep people coming. One, we need an educated workforce, but two, how do we incentivize folks that are coming from out of state to live here after they finish college? Something we've been talking about for a long time here at the Chamber is, how do we grow our marketplace? How do we incentivize people to stay? Well, a good thing would be create jobs. And if we had job opportunities for kids to stay, it would certainly help our economy out greatly. So we had some great discussion points yesterday with Joey. And that one of the things that we're going to be looking at is how going forward is creating some synergies within the economic development realm. And we really got to find some niche markets, as we're going to be competing with everybody in the world right now and trying to get back up and running. We've got more assets in this community than any other community. Some are just underutilized assets, but now is a great opportunity to get our stuff together and really start promoting Columbia. There's a lot of good things that are coming on. So back to where we are this week. So unemployment 8.6 here in Columbia, but down nationally to 13.1. If y'all, I mean, this is kind of crazy to see the cases keep going up of COVID-19. It's startling, quite frankly, in how many new cases we had, but testing is up. I was reading the New York Times this morning that on average, the percentage of positive cases is still dipping, which is good. So we are testing a lot more. We're going to see those numbers, raw numbers, go up. But proportionally speaking, the number of positive cases is going down, is trending down, because yes, we are testing more people, so we are going to see raw net numbers go up, but the decline percentage wise. So that is good. Columbia saw 2 records in the last week, or South Carolina's seen 2 records, in the last week, which is unbelievable. So we need, even in light of, even if you want to protest, wear your mask and carry your hand sanitizer with you. we are going to still see impacts. A lot of folks started work this week. In fact, downtown Columbia, a lot of people working in large office buildings started work on Monday and left at lunchtime because of more protests. So they got off on a rocky start, but we welcome them back. And Monday, the 8th, you'll see a lot more businesses start the process of opening back up. Again, a lot of the corporate folks are going to be slowly opening. By that, I mean, a Colonial Life was talking to Tim Arnold this week. 10% of their workforce started on Monday, and they'll slowly, gradually get back to work through August. The same with many of the banks and national brands. So we look forward to it. Traffic has got picked up, right? If everybody noticed, you can't zip down anywhere anymore. But a couple other big items. Fort Jackson announced yesterday that they are opening back up as much as they can, which is great for those folks that like to go for a bike ride out at Fort Jackson. Not me, but for those that do, that's awesome. There are a lot of them that do it, but you're going to be able to get back on Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that's 5 days a week. They're going to release restrictions. If the reason they pick those days, those are the 2 days they don't have graduations and stuff. And so it just muddies the water. And they're not allowing people, they're not going to be doing in-person graduations anytime soon. So this does, but anyway, it allows anybody that has a DBIPS card or a special exemption on the Fort Jackson, those for bike riders or whatever, 5 days a week to get out there and get your exercise on, which is great. Want to point out, Nick, with Elliot Davis, they did a good job of this too. Several other groups have put some things out relating to PPP. In fact, the Congress, Senate passed, and I did not see, sorry, I didn't check on this. The president, if he didn't sign it yesterday, he'll probably sign it today. But the amendments and reforms to the PPP, vitally important for anybody that was able to get PPP. Make sure you get a hold of the reforms that were passed this week. Nick, I'm going to check off a few, and then if I miss something where you want to add to it, feel free.
Yeah.
Okay. It extended the deadline to spend the PPP funds from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. It decreased the amount of time, the amount of money that could be spent on payroll from 75 to 60. That's the percentage, which allows more of that loan to be used for overhead. It extended the time frame for folks to have to pay back those loans from 2 years to 5 years, and it put some codification in for the loan forgiveness program. So if they've had employee losses and all, so there's a lot to it. Ask a professional. Nick, you want to throw anything in there?
Yeah, no, I mean, there was a ton of stuff in there. And frankly, you know, it's the flexibility that a lot of businesses have been asking for. You know, the 24 weeks is great, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the best option. You can still choose the 8 weeks. You know, if you choose the 24 weeks, then that's just a longer time period you have that you have to, you know, kind of bring your head count up and maintain that. So, you know, to the point about the rehire exceptions, you know, the application for forgiveness clarified that as long as you tried to hire back and an employee turns you down, or your employee voluntarily initiated their, you know, their leave, their retirement, reduction of workforce, that was okay. So now too, you know, if you cannot find employees or you can't restore your business due to social distancing or other federal rules, that's not going to kind of get you out of it. You just got to document that. And that part's a little bit, you know, murky still, but it's great. Frankly, you know, I've been in this program for 2 months, and I'm a little bit going through the stages of grief over all the work and planning we've helped businesses with that have basically, you know, it's been very helpful, but kind of wiped away all that headache they already went through. And if they had known these things, you know, 8 weeks ago, the planning could have been, you know, so much more helpful to them. You know, people rushed to get their employees back, and they didn't necessarily, you know, have to, right? So very interesting time.
Good. Well, thanks for that. And if you have questions about it, let me know. We'll get you the right information. I'm sure Elliot Davis has got some stuff on their website as well on the reforms that were passed. So that's good stuff. A couple other points, and then we'll talk about the elephant in the room. Let's see. One big thing let me talk about for those that missed Wednesday. My days have been running together. Tuesday night, there was a fire at Epworth Children's Home, and it took out their supply warehouse. So they are going to be having pop-up ice cream socials all over town over the next few days. So keep Cola Daily had something today on it, but keep an eye out for them. Help those folks at Epworth that got devastated with the fire. Nobody was injured, let me just say that, but they did lose all the supplies that they have for the kids housed at Epworth. So our thoughts are with them. And if you like their ice cream, they're made famous for their peanut butter ice cream, which is pretty swell if you ask me. Go out and buy you some Epworth. That would help them out. All right. As we let off with, a lot has changed this week. And it was a crazy weekend downtown, all over the country, quite frankly. And it's just it's one that is provoking a lot of conversations, which is healthy. So I want to give two shout outs right now. One to Columbia's law enforcement community for really stepping up to the plate this week. They did a great job. But I also want to give a shout out to the peaceful protesters that actually use their constitutional right to go to the State House. I mean, it was pretty powerful. From the bird's eye view here on Lady Street, to watch the number of families that go to the protest, grandparents taking their grandkids. It was really, really cool. Now, there's a huge distinction between that crowd and some of the others that took a less peaceful approach to protesting. And I was glad to see Holbrook and Leon have a press conference yesterday announcing some arrests. And again, we've as a capital city with a state capital right downtown, it's great to see our Constitution work in person as we see people protest, and that's their right, and that's the beauty of this place. Well, we can't handle additional the riots, and I think the city and all of its agency partners did a good job of managing things. I think they were a little caught on Saturday, but that did not happen on Sunday and Monday. They were fully prepared, and Monday was very, very quiet. So the politics are the politics. We'll let them stand for themselves. But I will say we had a good, I applaud the city for taking decisive action on Saturday and putting in a curfew. I think that helped. But I props to Leon and Chief Holbrook for stepping up quickly. So I have sent some emails around trying to determine whether or not we've actually had a protest every single day this week. But they've been very, very peaceful. They're sitting right at the State House. And so I'm not sure. I've sent some emails around trying to discern if what this weekend holds, if there are any rallies and all, but we will get that out if we hear. I know we are cognizant downtown and literally, let me point out one more thing. So those protests broke out Saturday night. They finished early, but the city of Columbia's police department did a yeoman's job. I mean, we're talking about the city street guys, and they were down scraping graffiti off of buildings at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. They cleaned up. I think the last bit of glass I saw them clean up was 8 o'clock Sunday morning. That was the last building. So they had everything spit shined, and all during Saturday night and Sunday morning. So I appreciate their overtime efforts there to make, they didn't want anybody, the few bad apples to ruin it and give a bad view of what Columbia really looks like. So I appreciate the street crew at the city of Columbia. So with that, I'm happy to take questions, or if y'all have got comments. I didn't do the housekeeping stuff, but y'all know about the chat box, and feel free to use it. And Nick has already beat me to it because he posted an article from Elliot Davis on the changes to PPP. So feel free to check that out. If anybody else has got a comment, question, here's your time. We do have one bit of program next Tuesday. I'm really excited. My friend John Barnes with Pendleton Street Advisors is going to be on for our next webinar. And John will be discussing, Pendleton Street Advisor is basically a financial planner for business. So for succession planning, what you're hoping, what your trajectory looks like for your business. So I highly recommend y'all checking that out because a lot has changed in the last 3.5, 4 months. So you need to start thinking your business through. So we welcome John to the Chamber's webinar. All right, I'm checking comments. None.
Hey, Carl, do you have any information on? I'm curious to hear about this. I saw this in a news blast yesterday about the Small Business Relief Fund proposal from the Accelerate SC Committee.
So yeah, the Columbia Chamber, along with the Greenville Chamber and the Charleston Chamber, have submitted a proposal where we create a business relief fund of $100 million to be used out of the $1.9 billion that the feds have passed through to South Carolina. The idea was much like what Columbia's done, Greenville's done, others have done around the state, but this has lasted a lot longer than many had hoped, and some businesses in the state need some assistance. The criteria for those, I have not seen, Nick, but I'm sure it's going to be similar to what other communities have used. So I can get a hold of that, but the General Assembly is coming back in 2 weeks to look at spending some of that federal dollars that came through. And so they are coming in just for the short stint, just to deal with COVID dollars, not take up their budget, which they're coming back in September to do. So the small business relief package that Accelerate SC is promoting is one that we assigned, we really were pushing, is the state's response to help small local companies that need assistance during these times. So more that they have not approved that, and that's going to take General Assembly to do that. And I'm sure whatever guidelines we suggest will be changed by the General Assembly. Any other questions? That's a good question, though. Thank you. How about anybody hear anything that we need to know about? I'm ready for Scott Powers to be busy and bringing in all the sports groups back to Columbia. I know athletics gets to open up here really soon, which will be great. Lots of good partnerships going on. I'll give shout out to Prisma again for partnering with local communities and provide testing. It's been great. I did have the coolest thing. I went into the Lexington County government building yesterday, and I got my temperature checked it looked like an iPad on a stand, and it did a digital, a thermal scan of my temperature. Really cool and quick. I mean, within like less than 10 seconds, it had it read and I was done. But the new changes are getting enabled all over, which is kind of unbelievable. All right, I'm looking over my list because the chat box is quiet. Anybody else need to chime in on things that they're seeing, things they're hearing, questions? Anybody want to talk about the last week?
Hey, Carl, this
Yes.
is Ted. I guess perhaps maybe not to put the chamber on the spot, but as we've heard, there are going to be a lot of conversations ongoing with respect to justice and race relations. Is the chamber involved or going to be involved in those conversations? Is there an initiative that we can plug into that would help bring the business community in?
Yeah, thank you. And that's not on the spot at all. For those that know me, I'm one that have a lot of conversations before we announce something. And so I've been having those conversations this week. I mean, what I've never seen a more layered conversation in the last week. What started out with a horrible killing and a murder in Minneapolis but it caught at a time where it's so layered. Yes, the police cases against young African American men have escalated over the last years. Social media has helped with that. You also have pent-up frustration, and it's a huge age gap too. I mean, there's a generational divide here as well, because if you have folks in their 60s and 70s, they can actually see change that has occurred over the last 60 years. It may be small, but there is tangible stuff you can see of change. If you're part of the iPhone generation, if you were 10 years old when the iPhone was born, say you were born in 1997, what have you seen? If you think about Ferguson occurred 6 years ago, what has changed? So I get frustration from age of young African Americans that all they see is this police violence. So what I have been very deliberate in doing this week is make sure that we not just talk to the same people, but we need to bring in an age group and a demographic that's different than we've talked to before. And that doesn't mean they're chamber partners. That means they're community activists, they're college kids, they're high school kids. And so, yes, we need to be having these discussions as a community, as a business community, as our future workforce. But we're not ready to announce anything until I want to do a listening session with a bunch of folks and get the right folks at the table. Because having the same conversation is not going to do anything, in my opinion. This is Carl's opinion. But if we sit and chat about the same folks that have been chatting about it since I've been at the chamber, we clearly have not done our job in reaching out and expanding to include folks that who feel disenfranchised. So,
Carl, I want to respond.
Yes, sir.
This is Vince. So let me suggest to you that this is not generational. This is historical. And so because there may not have been iPhones and social media back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you'll find, and I think you used the right word, there's a lot of pent-up emotion that in a lot of African-American men and women historically that over time just haven't maybe voiced strong enough or maybe too strong that the message got lost. So I wouldn't treat this as a generational issue. I would treat it as a historical issue. Let me make point number two.
Yeah.
Number two is when you say the right people, I'd be careful in using that type of language because everybody's the right person. Anyone who has been exposed to many of the systemic issues historically have some concerns. Most African Americans are really not concerned in and of itself about racism. They're concerned about institutional racism. Mm-hmm. And that's why, and it's institutions like the ones that are on the phone have to come to the table and deal with some of the institutional policies and practices that have occurred or that are occurring. And so, yeah, it is a big elephant. That elephant is out of the gate now. And this is a moment in time that is, at least in my circles, is not going to change. It's going to be something that's going to be around, and it has to be dealt with and heard from.
Yeah, I totally agree. My reference, I'm sorry I wasn't clear. The generational thing was one of the layers. There's many layers to this. I mean, I think, would you agree? I mean, I think you could even say, hey, we've had 3.5 months of being at home, pent up. It's frustrating. There's not to everybody, but to some. I think you could add probably another 10 to 12 different reasons, but whatever it is, the reasons don't matter as much as what goes next, right? The outcomes. And so the dialogue will be good. I spent an hour and a half on the phone with chamber presidents from around the country talking about this week. and how different communities are responding. And so we're taking a look at I'm taking a look at other regions and seeing what they're doing. And but it's going to talk, a lot of it's going to have to be about relationships that we have here in the Midlands and with a number of folks at the table. Absolutely. So thanks for that, Claire. Allow me to clarify.
Yeah, I really believe we're at an inflection point. I'm one of those old guys who remembers the 60s and all the way through, and there are certain inflection points, but I don't think this is going away. And I think this is a time for us as a country, as business owners, as managers, to really take a hard look at how our businesses are structured. What are the core values that we have in each one of our businesses? Are there changes? Are there thought processes that we need to make? Have we had conversations with our employees of all races and listened to them? Are there changes that we can make? And I believe, and I agree, there's systemic racism that's pervasive. How do we change that? It's not something that we can make a pronouncement. You know, here I run a TV station. The easiest thing for me to do is bring all the community leaders, the protesters, everybody together for a town hall meeting, make it pretty, make everybody smile, clap your hands and all that, and put it on the air. Everybody likes it. I win a big award, and we go away and we go back to normal. That doesn't work. That means nothing. I think as a country, and we talk about building Columbia and making Columbia that place where we want business to come and locate because we are so special. Well, why don't we make ourselves so special? I think there are things that we can do to really make a difference. And it's not something that we can do overnight. This is going to take a long time. And people have to really think and understand, what does white privilege really mean? I don't think I really understood it. I've talked to an awful lot of folks. You know, I've never had the talk with my kids about what to do when you get stopped by the police. I've never had that conversation. I've never had to have the conversation. What do you do when somebody follows you in a store because they think you're going to shoplift? I've never had that conversation. That's a privilege. But so many people who I work with, who work for me, who work with me, have that conversation on a regular basis. We have to realize that. We have to realize that as a country. We have to realize that as business owners. What are we going to do? What difference can we make? I don't have the answer, but I'm thinking. I think we all need to think. So Vince, I go back to what you were saying. I think absolutely, you know, this is not something that that's going to be fixed overnight.
Mr. Odell, I think you nailed it. I think your comments are right on the mark. I really appreciate those comments. And so I would suggest that there are organizations out there like Dominion. I heard yesterday some great things that Dominion was doing. The CEO sent out a message system-wide and acknowledged some of the issues that are going on in the country. And he didn't hide from it. And then he said, and then we're going to put some money behind it. And he's pledged $5 million to different parts of Dominion's footprint to help businesses and communities start to do things about it. I do think you're right. I mean, this is a moment in time. And I think here's the key for us, Columbia, in any city. The question is, how do we come out of this? Right. We've gotten into it. How do we come out of it? And we've got to figure out how to come out of it stronger than when we went into it. And there are some, and I agree with you, Mr. Odell, having a town hall meeting, yeah, that's okay, but that feels good at that moment. The question is, what happens after those moments? What do we do? And that's why we have to sit down with systems. I think the approach has to be for all the different systems to take a look, internal and external, to see, are we meeting the test? Are we passing the test? Do we have people in the right places? Are we having the right dialogue? Do we have the right policies and practices? As an example, I mean, yeah, it's easy to applaud law enforcement, and I love Chief Holbrook and Sheriff Lott. They're personal friends of mine. But one of the questions I would ask them, and I know Lott has it, is do you have a citizens review committee? Do you have a group of people who can review crimes and issues that happen not only in the community, but even with your own officers? you go back to Minneapolis, this gentleman had time after time after time issues that were painted against him, and nothing was done. This murder probably could have been prevented if someone had taken him through some process to ensure that that wouldn't happen again. But he felt comfortable doing that, and now as a result, a man is dead. But I would tell you, from an African American standpoint, we have the talks almost from the time that our children are able to communicate with us. So regardless of their age, we start having those talks, and we have those talks all along their life. And it's pretty common in our community. My son is 37. I still have to talk with him. I had a talk with him on Sunday, and I shared with him, some things that I wanted him to be careful. By the way, here's something that's really interesting. I have to have the talk with myself. I have to tell me what I need to do and what I need to say if I get stopped by law enforcement, or if I have an encounter at work, and those things. So I appreciate the comments from this group, from you, Mr. Odell, and Paul, for you to even present this, and Ted for bringing it up. But it is a serious issue that we can't just skate by. So thanks for the conversation.
We'll open it up. Anyone else? Kevin?
Just being a list person, it would be interesting to me, and of course some of us maybe haven't experienced some of the systematic issues you're talking about. It'd be helpful to me as a list person to, maybe it's useful, and the chamber maybe can lead with this in creating a list of areas where they need to be addressed in terms of systematic racism.
Yeah, that would be good.
I think we have to keep the conversation going, right? I mean, the inflection point is only valuable if we take this conversation and keep moving it forward, and it's not just a moment in time, where we've seen these protests. I saw a sign from one of the protests that really, I think it was just so profound and spoke to me. The sign says, "Racism is so American. It's so American that people think when you're protesting racism that you're protesting America." And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And so I just think we need to. Columbia has so many great people and so many great resources. I think we're in a great position to keep that conversation going and be a bright spot.
But we have to listen to each other, and we have to ask each other some tough questions sometimes.
Yep.
And Vince, thanks for sharing. But I know you've had those conversations, but I thank you for sharing that. I think that's important for us to hear.
Yep.
I think the guys in my circle, we the last 48 hours we've been discussing Drew Brees, and many of us, let me speak for myself, believe that Drew Brees is just a phenomenally good guy. Who's done some great things in San Diego, in New Orleans, and in Indiana, where he lived. But even in the midst of what's going on, he didn't understand. He wasn't listening, Mr. Odell. He and our concern is a good guy still has that view. So someone who most of the guys in the NFL and around him respected. He and his wife just gave $5 million to help in the state of Louisiana. And he still didn't get it. He thought that the protest was against America. The gentleman Nick that just spoke, he nailed it. The protest is not anti-flag or anti-American. It's anti-being killed and abused and misused over a history, over decades and centuries. And that was really the message that Cap was trying to get across in a peaceful way. And Drew still missed that. And to understand that is important. And he's a good guy. And so I appreciate your comments, Mr. Odell. We all have to take a look at ourselves. We all have to have those conversations, and we all have to be willing and able to have honest dialogue without separating ourselves from each other. That's the only way we're going to move forward as a society, moving forward, I think. So.
I'm going to leave this going if anybody else wants to chime in. It's a good conversation. All right. Well, here's what we'll start down this path.
Hey, Carl.
Yes.
Just a very, very small mention, if it's appropriate, I would think it would be to also, in these conversations and in these efforts, to make sure that that our growing Hispanic community is included as well. And I mentioned that with some personal experience, having being married to a Cuban American and several years ago in another community, having to deal with the emotions of my teenage son who had just been sprawled across the hood of his car for going 5 miles over the speed limit in our own neighborhood. And so just something to ask that you keep in mind.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. Point taken.
Carl, thanks for bringing this up, and Ted, you as well. So I appreciate you not running by this, because it is on the minds and the hearts of most people in America and around the world. So thanks for bringing it up and addressing it. I hope there's some tangible action as a result of this meeting moving forward as well, Carl.
Well, I think to your point of it's here and now, it's not going away. It's true, and we have got. We're capital cities are more diverse. They have a lot more interest to take in at a lot of different areas, and so this one is true. It's time to have many discussions, but the good news is we are a small and close-knit community, and it's all about relationships in South Carolina, and we're able to sit and talk about it. That's the good news, and so I look forward to having some more dialogue and open conversation, and so I appreciate y'all that have spoken up and are willing, and those that are listening. And so, well, let's do this. The time is 9:37, and we appreciate everybody tuning in, and we thank you for being a part of the chamber, for listening, and you'll see some action stuff from us, but I'll report back next week as well on what we're doing and have a game plan together. But listen, we'll get through this and we'll be better for it. So we appreciate everybody. We appreciate our partnership. Thanks to the staff on here as well. And I hope y'all have a great week, and we'll catch up again next week. All right. Enjoy your weekend.
You as well, Carl.
See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.